We shall embark today upon an intellectual journey, an exploration into the profound and often overlooked synthesis between two remarkable worlds, the deep philosophical wisdom of ancient Greece and the symbolic traditions of Freemasonry. Our purpose is to investigate how the very seeds of thought from Plato, from the Stoics, and even from the ancient mystery schools are so intricately woven into the very fabric of the craft. So, let us begin our inquiry.
And this, really, is the central question that frames our entire investigation. We know, of course, that modern, speculative Freemasonry was formally constituted in London in the year 1717. But does that make its ideas truly modern? Or is the craft something much, much older, a kind of vessel, a custodian of perennial wisdom? Is it merely a product of the scientific Enlightenment, or does its philosophical lineage stretch all the way back to the sun-drenched shores of ancient Greece?
So then, here is the path we shall follow. We'll begin with a scholarly debate over Masonic origins. Then, we will venture into the lodge itself to explore the quite astonishing parallels between its rituals and the ancient mysteries. From there, we'll examine its use of Greek geometry, its deeply philosophical moral compass, and even the very architecture of its symbolic space. And finally, we will draw all these threads together to truly appreciate this remarkable legacy of light.
We begin our journey, quite fittingly, at the threshold. Here, we must address the academic discussion surrounding where and when Freemasonry truly found its philosophical soul. You see, the transformation from the operative stonemasons guilds of the Middle Ages to the speculative philosophical lodges of the 18th century was nothing short of profound. It was a journey where the literal tools of a builder were transfigured into symbolic instruments for moral and intellectual growth.
Now, at the heart of this historical question, we find a fascinating debate. On one side, you have esteemed scholars like Margaret Jacob. She argues that Freemasonry is, in essence, a modern invention, a secular society created in the crucible of 18th century English politics and the scientific revolution of Newton. But on the other hand, you have historians like David Stevenson who trace its speculative roots back further to the 16th and 17th centuries in Scotland. He makes a compelling case that the craft was shaped by the Renaissance, a period of intense rediscovery of classical texts, and an integration of ideas from Hermeticism and Neoplatonism, which sought to blend Plato's thought with a more mystical worldview.
And what this illustrates so clearly is that regardless of which origin story one favors, the connection to the Hellenic world has been a constant, ever-deepening process. In the Middle Ages, the operative stonemasons revered figures like Euclid and Pythagoras as almost mythical founders of their craft. Then, during the Renaissance transition, Neoplatonic philosophy was consciously woven into its nascent symbolism. By the 18th century, its ethical system was explicitly founded upon the virtues of Plato and the morality of the Stoics. And in the 19th century, this became even more pronounced, with a deliberate revival of the ancient Greek mystery schools in the higher degrees. It was a golden thread that just became more and more visible over time.
Now that we have established the historical context, let us step across the threshold and into the symbolic heart of Freemasonry, its rituals. For it is here, in this first chamber, that we find the most profound and striking echoes of the ancient world. Specifically, we hear the echoes of the great Greek mystery schools, which used powerful, dramatic ceremonies to guide initiates towards genuine spiritual insight.
You see, the ancient mystery schools, such as those at Eleusis, typically followed a three-part spiritual journey. It began with lustration, which was a form of ritual purification. This was followed by the initiation itself, where the candidate, known as a mystis, was formally admitted into the sacred space. And the journey culminated in a final stage called perfection, or Epopteia, a word which literally means to see. This was the moment of ultimate transformative revelation. Now, consider the fundamental structure of Freemasonry's Blue Lodge degrees. The parallel is, well, it's quite unmistakable. The degree of entered apprentice serves as a symbolic purification. The fellow craft degree represents a deeper admission into the work and knowledge of the craft. And the Master Mason degree is the culmination, a profound allegorical journey through darkness and symbolic death, leading toward a final, brilliant illumination, an experience quite consciously designed to be its own form of Epopteia.
So one must ask, what is the purpose of this shared narrative? In both the ancient Dionysian mysteries and the Masonic Master Mason degree, the central drama revolves around a figure who is slain and then restored to life. The goal, you see, is identical: to compel the initiate to contemplate mortality head-on, and through this powerful symbolic drama, to teach the perennial lesson that the human soul is immortal and that spiritual transformation is possible. It's a timeless archetype conveying a timeless truth.
Having experienced the dramatic heart of the craft, we now turn to its intellectual mind. Freemasonry has often been described as a system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. Well, the primary language of those symbols is geometry, a sacred science inherited directly from Pythagoras and his followers, who believed that the universe itself was constructed upon a divine mathematical harmony.
And at the very core of this intellectual tradition, we find Euclid's 47th proposition, which is of course better known to the world as the Pythagorean theorem. Now, in the very foundational text of modern Freemasonry, it is described as nothing less than the foundation of all Masonry. Its importance is not merely practical, not just for building structures, no. It is a profound symbol. It serves as proof of a universal, rational, and unchanging harmony that underpins creation. Evidence that the cosmos is not chaos, but is instead the beautiful and orderly work of a great architect.
This Pythagorean influence goes deeper still, into the very meaning of numbers themselves. To the Pythagoreans, numbers weren't just for counting, they were fundamental principles of reality. The monad, the number one, represented absolute unity, the indivisible source of all creation, a clear philosophical parallel to the Masonic concept of the great architect of the universe. Then you have the duad, the number two, which represented duality, opposition, and the world of matter. In the Masonic Lodge, this principle is powerfully symbolized by the two great pillars, Boaz and Jachin, which represent the great pairs of opposites that define our existence.
Indeed, the intellectual curriculum for a fellowcraft Mason is built upon the 7 liberal arts and sciences, a pedagogical model inherited directly from the classical Greek ideal of a complete education. This was divided into the trivium, that is grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, music, astronomy, and geometry. And within the Masonic tradition, geometry is held to be the crown jewel, the highest of these sciences. It is seen as the most sacred art, the very tool by which we may come to understand the divine blueprint of creation itself.
From the intellectual, we must now turn to the ethical. Freemasonry describes itself as a beautiful system of morality. And that system is not arbitrary. It is constructed squarely upon a foundation of Hellenic philosophy, drawing most heavily from Platonic virtues and Stoic self-discipline. The entire purpose of Masonic work, you see, is the transformation of the self from a rough ashlar, an undressed, imperfect stone, into a perfect ashlar, a stone made ready to be part of a greater spiritual temple. And that transformative work is guided by virtue. The guiding stars upon this path of self-improvement are the 4 cardinal virtues. Now, these are not a Masonic invention. They are inherited directly from classical philosophy, most famously articulated by Plato in his Republic. They are presented as the essential qualities required to govern one's own soul and to act with fairness toward all of humanity. Let us examine them, one by one.
First among them is prudence. For Plato, this was the supreme virtue of the rational soul, like a charioteer skillfully guiding the wild horses of our passions and appetites. In Masonry, it represents the wisdom to discern truth and the ability to apply reason to all of our actions. It is the intellectual virtue that illuminates the path for all the others.
Next, we have temperance. This is the direct philosophical heir to the Greek ideal of sophrosynny, a state of profound self-control and inner equilibrium. It perfectly embodies the famous maxim inscribed at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, nothing in excess. For a Mason, temperance is the constant practice of keeping one's passions within due bounds and avoiding all extremes in every part of life. The third is fortitude. And we must be clear, this is not merely physical bravery. It is, above all, moral courage. It is the strength of character and the firmness of will to face any adversity without abandoning one's principles. It is the inner resilience required to practice the other virtues, especially when doing so is most difficult.
And finally, we arrive at justice. For Plato, justice was the supreme virtue, the perfect harmonious balance of prudence, temperance, and fortitude within the soul. Masonry adopts this view entirely. Justice is the ultimate aim of the moral life, the unwavering principle of fairness, equity, and right conduct towards every person, a principle which is perfectly encapsulated in the Masonic phrase, to act upon the square.
We come now to a kind of grand synthesis. We have examined the ritual, the geometry, and the ethics. Now let us consider the Masonic Lodge itself, the physical space wherein this work is performed. For the lodge is not merely a room, it is a microcosm of the universe, an architectural allegory, and its very design is a tangible expression of these ancient Greek principles.
A Masonic Lodge is said to be symbolically supported by 3 great pillars: wisdom, strength, and beauty. What is truly remarkable is how these concepts are mapped directly onto the three classical orders of Greek architecture. Wisdom is represented by the intellectual and graceful Ionic order and is linked to the worshipful master who governs the lodge. Strength is represented by the sturdy, ancient Doric order and linked to the senior warden who provides support. And beauty is represented by the ornate and refined Corinthian order, linked to the junior warden who ensures the harmony of the whole. It is a truly deliberate and elegant fusion of Greek design and Masonic philosophy.
Our intellectual journey through the symbolic temple now draws to its conclusion. Throughout this exploration, we have traced a clear, a direct, and I believe an undeniable line of thought, a conscious inheritance connecting the modern Masonic Lodge to the ancient philosophical schools and sacred mysteries of Greece. This connection, as we have seen, is not superficial, it is foundational.
So, let us briefly summarize what we have discovered. On a ritualistic level, the Masonic initiation directly mirrors the dramatic structure and the core archetypes of the Greek mysteries. On a symbolic level, its essential language of geometry, of number, and of architecture is a direct inheritance of Greek rational and aesthetic principles. And finally, on the philosophic level, its entire system of morality is built squarely upon the Platonic and Stoic quest for virtue. The conclusion, therefore, seems inescapable. Freemasonry is a conscious and living inheritor of this ancient wisdom.
We shall end with perhaps the most famous of all the Delphic maxims, a phrase attributed to Socrates, "Know thyself." This profound imperative captures the ultimate goal of the entire Greek philosophical quest. It is also, at its very core, the singular purpose of the Masonic journey. It describes a path that begins in symbolic darkness and leads toward intellectual and spiritual light. A journey not to some distant otherworldly heaven, but into the deepest mysteries of the self. The light of ancient Hellas, it would seem, continues to illuminate the path for the modern seeker.